Thank you everybody for being here, despite some of the strikes in some countries around us. So I'm glad that most of you are here, and we have a full room today. That's very good for us, and to see all the community together from all over the world. Actually, we have people from different countries. I'm going to give you an update on the Rotorcraft Safety Roadmap that was launched last year, almost 1 year day by day. And you'll see that in 1 year things happened. And also having a short chat on VTOL, eVTOL landscapes and introducing after the sessions that will be in the dedicating room. Just one point and a reminder, that's not one of my favorite slides, but that the reality of today's world in helicopter. We have still a huge number of accidents, 1 per week, and 1 fatal per month. That's what we need to tackle. And the risk mapping has been refined this year thanks to a huge work from the safety analysis teams, from OEMs, but also in-house in EASA. And now we have a clearer picture. So as you see, most of it in the non-commercial operations, and we knew it before. We have also flight training, and it's something which is still very relevant and something we need to tackle actively. And you'll see that maybe one of the devices that is outside is a key enabler for that. And I thank VR Motion for bringing their simulator. You'll see it's fantastic now. And you'll see also the improvement in 1 year. You've seen it last year. You've seen today. It's much more, I would say, industrial-like and really amazing to fly. We have also the SPO, which is quite a large part. Here also operators in the room, that's something we would need to tackle. And then lastly, the commercial that are also something. But really, if we tackle already NCO training and SPO, we would really target 45% of the, 75% of all the accident. It would be very good. That was the roadmap overall plan. I will not enter into detail, but basically that's what I presented last year. And where we are today on different aspects will be a bit deep dive in the following slides. But just to give you an overall picture, if you would like to have a look at the slides afterwards, it's quite a number of streams, data, safety training, safety promotion, and simplify, together also on the design aspects, and somehow the CS modernization. We'll see the detailed plan. So now, last year, it was a roadmap. We translated into a plan, really, with milestones, target, deliverables, much more structured than it used to be, so that we can really pilot the activities on each side of the organization, because it's really a trans EASA activity, not only EASA, industry, because we have also industry being part of it. And that's really something which is similar to the GA roadmap, but here with a focus on safety. And I would like to thank all people around for the participation and all people contributing, because it's a huge work. Safety streams were defined: safety data, training safety, training devices and simulators, safety promotion, CS modernization, simplifications to help you in your daily business, helicopter design improvement. Also, we have streamlined the actions with our GA colleagues within the frame of their GA roadmap, and introducing also new concepts like safety rating for helicopters, but we could go beyond, even for operators at some point in time. Net safety benefits, to really have trade-off between compliance and net safety benefits on how we can enable that. And continuing aviation educations, where we want to target accountable manager, but also other people within organizations, like it's done in HEMS for the medical staff, but to get a training, a life training all along their career, to remember about safety, because it's not something that is intrinsic. Safety data was the objectives, really was to have an accurate pictures, and the risk mapping I showed you before is really the outcome of this deep dive analysis. So the activity has been completed in 2019. The data set has been reviewed, consolidated also, huge work, and we've cross-checked different databases all around the field. Not an easy job, very painful sometimes, occurrences by occurrences, reviewing that, gathering them into a consolidated data. We have also set up a helicopter safety analysis group team, which is meeting before the Rotorcraft committee. And we've decided to have focus sessions. So we've done sessions already on HEMS, and SPO will be done. So that's the two areas of focus. And these people, gathering ad hoc expertise all around the place, do deliver a risk mapping of these activities. So that's going beyond. We have also started the collaboration, continue the collaboration with Heli Offshore, because we don't want to duplicate what's done already in the offshore field, and taking their safety analysis, risk mapping directly into our work program so that we can work all along together. And lastly, the Rotorcraft will be included in the phase 2 of Data for Safety. You know, it's the big data programs, hopefully gathering occurrences for all over Europe. Not only occurrences, but data, helicopter data, so that we can provide an industry benchmark. And that within your SMS, as an operator, you can benchmark yourself. And that's really important, because when you are focused on your organization, you have a level, but you don't know where you are located compared to others. That will give you sense to your data in a much broader view, and that's really one of the big safety enhancements we could see, to give you, not being blind only on your operation, but see the overall landscape. Safety rating. Safety rating, the objective was to develop the concept for European safety rating scheme for the Rotorcraft. So what we've done in 2019, we've done a comparative review of different schemes all around the globe, identifying strengths and success factors. We have discussed also with Euro NCAP in the car industry. It has been a success in the car industry. And we have initiated a concept for Rotorcraft. We are discussing also with Airbus, Leonardo, but also other OEM, Sikorsky Bal, in the frame of the project Cassiopeia from Shell on the offshore, so it's more dedicated on the offshore side. And we think maybe 2 streams would be very valuable, one for light helicopter, one for heavy ones, because offshore are already well equipped, and maybe it's more on the upside that we need to go something. So the first concept is there on the table. We need to carry on the discussions. We have also checked with a legal, what are the legal framework we could set up such a system. The next steps is really to deep dive into the activity and see how we can implement something that is reasonable, that is meaningful, and supporting the safety at the end of the day. Training safety, oops, sorry. So the idea here is really to revamp Rotorcraft training to become more effective at the end of the day, especially for private pilots. So we have started a survey towards European DTO and ATOs, so Declared Training Organization and Approved Training Organization, who are specialized in helicopter training, and primarily on PPL on light helicopters. We have also contacted NAAs, and the survey is asking them where they see drawbacks, where they would see benefits, and how we could move forward. So the survey will be available by the end of the year, so in the next weeks. And we will have an analysis on that beginning of next year and define what would be the potential improvements in the near future. And probably some rulemaking could be affected on that. One point also, we have also started to engage EASA staff on the PPLH theory, at least, for really live experience, because I do think you know, you can have feedback from external stakeholders. Leaving yourself the training is probably much better in terms of, okay, I do better understand what's going on. And so we have 19 people right now training for the PPLH theory. It's quite an effort on the financial side. We hope to convert that also with not 19, but partly some PPLH full pilot training, to really have a hands-on on what is the training about, how it is structured, what we could improve, because what we see in the field is different. And we have also engaged with some TC holder on specific helicopter training procedure revisions. We can speak about hydraulics of hydraulic trainings, where we've worked with Airbus Helicopter very closely to update the procedure to alleviate as much as possible the misunderstanding people had during this training, which was quite leading to some accident in the training area. Also, we would like to push for virtual reality simulations on this kind of training. Auto-rotation trainings reduce the training in flight, which is not necessary absolutely to get the hands-on on the helicopter. Training safety, here also in the same vein, but it's really to evaluate each and every requirements that is mandating some training, and especially the regulation in the FCL, so the FCL 210, FCL 110, and LAPL, to see where we have inconsistency. Typically, we have inconsistency between PPL and LAPL, which is quite strange in the system, and needs to realign that to have a better view. Realign also with what's done in fixed wing. You mentioned last year that in fixed wing you have 12 hours minimum flight hours. In helicopters you have only 2. And by the way, piloting a Robinson or a Cessna is I guess everybody would agree that piloting a Robinson or a small helicopter, I don't want to trigger, let's say, a Robinson, sorry for that. It's a small helicopter, it's much more complicated than a large one. Now we have also to see that there is a cost associated to that. And this cost in helicopter, the minimum, I would say, flight hours fare is around 400 euro, which is definitely almost 4 times the one in fixed wing. That's something we need to take in considerations. Here also, some alternative devices, not on helicopter, but cheaper simulator devices which are representative enough for what we need to do, may be also a key solutions. And the technology is getting mature today, as you can see in the lobby, and that will be something we will brief on. We have also to review the instructor qualification and training, and it's more going from a checking point of view to a training point of view. And for instance, really also introduce a 15-minute safety briefing within the yearly check that is today done. Start with that, so that it's not only getting on the helicopter, see if you can fly it. No, it's preparing how you manage your flights much more in depth, and giving some flavor of what can happen in the fleet. For you as a private pilot mostly. For people who are not flying on a daily basis, but from time to time, sometimes only once a year, and that may not be fully aware 1 year after that piloting a helicopter is in itself a great challenge. It's a great fun, but could have some drawbacks at the end of the day. And also we want to review all trainings where we impose some high-risk maneuver in flight, and see how we can either remove that because the risk associated within the training is too high compared to the safety benefit we can have into the overall landscape, or do this maneuver in another devices, or train for a number of maneuvers on other devices, and then do it only once you have really got the muscle memory, I would say, on training simulator to embark into the real flight. And that brings us, logically to training devices and simulators. It's a huge world, and the objective is to promote the development and use of new innovative, and most importantly for also the rotorcraft community, cost-effective training devices. Today, a full flight simulator is a number of times, it's almost 10 times the price of light helicopters. Obviously, people cannot afford to train on these devices. It's definitely, and I prefer to train directly on the helicopter. You can break 10 helicopters before you have the same price of your simulator. So that's already a big step that we need to tackle. Now, technology is becoming very much mature. you'll see in the lobby. I encourage you really to test it. And you, for the one who were there last year, you can see already the improvement in the resolution of the goggles from 4K to 8K, the improvement of the setup of the device itself. And that's only 1 year development. You can imagine within 5 years, it will be pretty much very close to the helicopter. So what we've done, we've signed an innovation partnership contracts with a virtual reality simulator company, and it's namely VR Motion, who is presenting here, to evaluate really what the technology is about, how we can use it, how we can make sure these simulation devices can be implemented into the overall training. There is also a FSTD evolution, which is currently in development with the rulemaking 0196. And it's really to enable these new devices, new technologies within the framework, the regulatory framework of the flight simulator training devices. That's the first step. It's to alleviate the regulatory burdens that are preventing today this kind of technology and open up to a much broader, I would say, performance-based simulator devices. And lastly, we have also launched a survey to ATO and NAS to identify in the training simulator environment what could be improved towards the future. The next step is to identify the change, feed them into the existing rulemaking tasks, and list them into the EPAS, and maybe some of them will lead to a new regulatory program. But what we have to say is that this technology could already be probably certified within some adaptations, but some companies are moving towards these steps to see how a virtual reality simulator could be certified. We are also doing that evaluation with people. So that's very interesting and very much where EASA is involved with the flight test pilot, for instance, are giving a lot of advices. Operational pilots also are evaluating these devices. Safety promotion. Safety promotion has been already a key pillar since years, and ESPNR is very active in the topics. We want to be sure we provide the right material at the right people in the right format. So we have launched EASA web portal Rotorcraft, which is online. It's not the full one we would like to have, but at least we have a dedicated page right now. The full set where we have a unique entry points into EASA Rotorcraft world will be Q1 2020. So I encourage you to look at our website because we will revamp it completely, and we will take this opportunity to have a Rotorcraft dedicated entry points where as a community you will find all relevant information for Rotorcraft and probably VTOLs. We have run ESPNR workshop, safety workshop, which is also organized within this symposium. So there is a dedicated session on that. We have started to build up videos and podcasts. So the first podcast went live last week, or yes, I think so. And we are glad that the Rotorcraft was one of the leading in this area. And we have also preparing a lot of videos with your support that will be released on a regular basis all along the year around key safety messages. And it's a major change compared to the past. The past was based on leaflet, if you remember well. We had a bunch of leaflets, and often the leaflets were left on tables. Videos are much more attractive for people, shorter, easier to understand. And also, Peter was speaking about new people coming in, younger people coming in the industry. That's what they understand the best. And really it's targeting that within that. And we will have also EASA web page with safety apps. Next step, 2020, we are building up with the safety promotion team within EASA in very close cooperation, a comprehensive plan to get really all safety promotion materials first developed, then released in a timely manner and in a pace every 3 months, I guess, will be the objectives, so that we are filling all the year with something where people can have tangible stuff. And obviously, Peter mentioned that the format of this symposium will change next year. And within next year, we'll have obviously a safety conference, safety workshop, much bigger, hopefully, than we have today. Not only having airworthiness people or ops, but having pilots, maintenance aspects also tackled all together, bringing a unique event where the entire rotorcraft community, not only a partial view, could really come together and benefit from each other. It will be not only also, it will be also with HEMS, SPO, everything that could be really useful for you as a community, but also for your people. That's really my message. It's not only for manager, accountable manager, airworthiness manager, it's for the day-to-day people, the people that are working on a daily basis in the field. That's the one we need to tackle, because that's the one who are doing the safety at the end of the day. These people need to be into the safety conferences. We are going to really set up dedicated training sessions for them, not only for managers or higher level people. So I really count on you to bring your people in for 3 days next year and to embark on that. That's really what will make the difference at the end of the day. So the European roadmap is, but there is a global footprint, obviously, and it's not only European. We want to promote also that a bit more worldwide. So what we did in 2019, we really did some promotion at ICAO level. First, we have a working paper that has been endorsed at the ICAO Europe, and also we have done an information paper at the ICAO General Assembly, which was very well received. By the way, it was the only ICAO paper on rotorcraft. So you see that the visibility in the higher sphere of the aviation communities is quite low, and I'm glad that we have triggered it a bit more, raising a bit more awareness. We need to push further, because that's really what's important at the end of the day. At the political level, we can make a lot of differences. The roadmap was also presented worldwide, and I would like to thank also Airbus Helicopter within their roadshow. Gilles, you are in the room, so I don't forget you. We have done in the frame of EU-China APP, so it's a program, safety workshop in Dayang, safety workshop in Kunming, safety workshop in Beijing, because that's the future also. You want all to develop your business in this area. If the business is not sustainable in terms of safety, we will have a problem. And we've seen in some countries it was difficult. So it's the right moment to be there to promote the safety. Southeast Asia also, we've done some promotion. We've done a helicopter safety workshop in Bangkok. South Asia, Costa Rica, Kathmandu in Nepal. Unfortunately, sometimes it's not always very successful. I take Nepal as a good example. We did a safety workshop which was around the safety roadmap, around the risks. And the week after, we had a fatal accident with the ministry because people were willing to take off in the bad weather conditions. It reminded us that it's a constant effort that we need to bring, and that even sometimes when we are not successful, we need to bring it to the next level. And step by step, we will make it. For 2020, what's next? I would say we have 3 events planned in Latin America. We will leverage also Airbus International Outreach with their helicopter safety roadshow. And I remind, more than 100 roadshows worldwide are performed each year by Airbus Helicopter. I encourage also other OEMs, I'm sure they are doing things, but to give it the same kind of impact. What is really missing out of it, because all of that is financed via some EU programs for international cooperations, what is missing is do the same in Europe. That's really my point. Do the same in Europe. And for that, we need more collaboration, especially with the national authorities. Next year, I would be really glad if I can mention, we've done a workshop in France, in Spain, in Italy, in Hungary, in wherever place in Europe, in Switzerland, that where there is also a need. There is a need in Europe, definitely. For that, we could maybe partner and maybe define a plan with some key operators around the place that could afford to make it, this safety promotion around the globe, around Europe. I would really encourage this cooperation. Best practices sharing is key for me to harmonize the safety level within Europe. And really rely on you. So if you have some willingness, please join after, and I will be glad to organize with that with Clément. We will organize all of that with the other support for sure. CS modernization. Here also, last year I mentioned that in the past 5 years, we were at amendment 4 of the 2 CSEs. So within the last 12 years, we did only 4 amendments of the CS 2729. Today, we are already at the amendment 6 and 7. So in 2 years, we are almost gain 40%. That's all the rulemaking. I will not go into detail, obviously, for all of that, but that's all the rulemakings that are in the pipeline towards helicopter. We have some generic cybersecurity, but we have also installation of recorders. You may have seen the NPA is out. Safety risk assessment for rotorcraft, a bit delayed because we need to realign. Human factor is coming very soon. First time introducing human factor in rotorcraft. Here also, you know, I think it's very important. We have the generic CS 2729 update, and we hope to consolidate a number of changes to take this opportunity to simplify also some of the aspects. Critical rotor components, pilot compartment view. This one may not, by the way, make it. I think the best intervention strategy shows that the cost-benefit analysis may not be so good. So we probably will have to cancel it, and it's also coming back. Hoist. Hoist is a very good also point. I would like to mention something on hoist. We were part of the SAE 26 group, together with main hoist manufacturer, main helicopter manufacturer, and our friends from the FAA. Now, this group has been set up since the last 5 years. Back in October, we had the ballot, and the ballot was unsuccessful. Despite the fact that EASA team closely coordinated with our friends from the FAA, with the manufacturer, with the hoist manufacturer, at the end of the day, the ballot was negative. I do think it's not a good way of working together. 5 years on hoist to get a standard, for me, is definitely too long, first. Secondly, at the end of the day, not to have a successful ballot, even though we have close cooperation be in front, is not a good message also. So we have decided to pull out of the group, really, because when it's not efficient, we have spent a huge amount of resources, you know, on that, at the end of the day, without having any benefit at the end of the day. So, and we have hoist manufacturers that are willing to design new hoist. For you operators, it's key. We know you are waiting for that since years now, and we want to move forward. But for that, they need certainty on the legal framework and on the technical specifications. So we'll take the last, I would say, unsuccessful ballot point. We will process it via the ETSO side, at least for hoist manufacturer in Europe to be able to design something for you in operations in a timely manner and not wait a couple of years down the road again. And we have the FCOM, which is also there. We have also oil monitoring, very important compared to service experience. Bird strikes, here also is taking the ARAC report from the FAA, where we were part of it also, introducing it to the CS. And fly-by-wire aircraft, it's maybe a delay down the road because so far the need is very limited. Now we are at Amendment 6 on the CS 27. 27, yes. Amendment 7 on the CS 29. We've almost doubled the updates in the last 2 years compared to the last 12 years. So that's a huge effort also on our teams. Helicopter, it's not the latest slide that I've sent, so it's unfortunate. But just to give you a point, Airbus Helicopter and the EASA team did a huge work on fuel tank crashworthiness, especially on the most affected fleet, I would say, because it's the one with the most helicopter. It's the AS350 Squirrel fleet. So at the end of the day, we have an agreement with Airbus Helicopter. First, from now on, every helicopter going out of the production line is fitted with a fuel tank crashworthy system. There is no more the options for an operator to untick these devices. That's a very strong message, because you know you were saving 25 kilos, 30 kilos. At the end of the day, you were taking a lot of risks for your staff on the operation side. We went beyond. Now all models do have a STC or a Airbus modification to get a fuel tank crashworthiness retrofitted. All AS350 that have been manufactured after 1994. Here also a huge step. So you don't have the excuse anymore to say we don't have solutions. All have been certified, approved, first developed also, either by STC holder or by Airbus Helicopter directly. Finally, to make it even more attractive, there is a plan from Airbus Helicopter to really push for the retrofit of the fleet, with a goal to have 100% of the fleet of helicopter manufactured after 1994 with a fuel tank crashworthy system within the next 5 to 6 years, if I remember well, with some financial incentive. As an operator, take the chance. Really take the chance. The cost of not having it now is 1,000 times, if not more, the cost to have it implemented. So please do it. What it means also is that when we have a common will, we can make things happening. We could have the similar things for a bunch of other devices on helicopters from other manufacturers also. Let's take another example, conspicuity devices. We can decide as a community to say, from now on, we do not deliver any helicopter without a conspicuity devices, whichever devices you may wish to implement, but give it to your operators. Then it's up to us to make them working together, and we are working on that with our friend of General Aviation. We see that. Bell will give a flavor also in one of the sessions of what they are doing. But really, it means that when there is willingness, we can get through it. And that's the main message, and it's very successful. Now, on the research side, you know, we have had some accidents, and we have had safety recommendations towards helicopter design. So on the research side, and for the first time to this level, EASA, together with the Commission, is putting more than 3 million on the table. 3 million euros for helicopter capsize survivability, and also for integrity improvement of rotorcraft main gearbox. You have the list of tasks. It's the first time we have a funding of this magnitude in the rotorcraft community. Here also, take the chance to make it happen. It's not so often that we can put such amount of money in the rotorcraft community, and that's really something I'm proud we have achieved together with the research teams within EASA, with our teams in the certification directorate, because we are writing the specifications and things like that. And that's also another message to show that helicopter is becoming more important on the radar. We have also a very good cooperation with our colleagues from General Aviation, and we do think that General Aviation helicopter could really benefit to talk more to each other, to understand more from each other. And under the General Aviation roadmap, we are developing the net safety benefit concept, because they are also very much interested. We are also addressing, as I was mentioning, on the conspicuity device, the risk of mid-air collisions, VFR in uncontrolled airspace. Really, we have had, in the last 5 years, more than 30 fatalities for in-flight collisions between fixed-wing and helicopters. I guess in 2020, this is not acceptable anymore. When your phone can broadcast your position with an accuracy of probably 10 meters, what the hell are we doing in the aviation community to have still to be blind in an airspace, where it's much easier, by the way. So really, there are several solutions around the place. we are trying not to push for solutions because it will be market distortion, but to make sure that each solutions develops around the market can be compatible with each other, rebroadcasted, and then that the whole community can have the full picture of the risk around them. I think combining that with use-space development for the US is key for you to fly safely in the future. That's really a big push we want to make. Here also, I would like to see a real community engagement. We bring, for each new helicopter, a conspicuity device. Then we make sure we have the analysis behind, and we make sure on our side that all helicopter fitted could see the risks around him. That's saving your life on a daily basis. You know, putting 8,000 euro on a new radio was a bit strange from a general aviation or helicopter point of view. For the big boys, it was making sense for a saturation point of view. Spending 1,000 euro, 2,000 euro on a conspicuity devices is worth the money by far. It's the life of your staff that you're risking on a daily basis. With the drone is going to increase, there is no way out. So please go for it. You know, on a fleet, it's not a huge amount of money. You are spending probably much more on some other equipment that may not have the same safety value. Common issue, access the data on the flying hours. Here also, we are getting better. We have now reached out the national authorities via our flight standards colleagues. We have a better picture, but still, when you look at the data, there are a lot of inconsistencies. We need to go deeper. Here also, equipping your helicopters with QAR or of devices like that could help. Safety promotion also, really reaching out also with them, not only having only fixed wing, but also fixed wing and rotorcraft, and making more affordable training devices for the whole communities is a common goal for the two roadmaps. We have industry-led tasks. The first one was securing financial support for safety improvement. Conspicuity devices could be a good business case. We can go probably all together to some financing body in the EU to have a real business case behind to promote. But we need for that more tangible projects, and that's coming from you. We cannot invent them. You know better the needs that would fit the safety of your operations on a daily basis. That's what we are targeting of. Recorders can be one side, conspicuity device, but maybe we are much more in the pipeline. We can build the case. Continued aviation education. So initial concept is being defined and refined. There is a dedicated workshop early next year with industry representative, EASA also around the table to make sure we have the concept right. The objective is to have something simple and effective within a reasonable cost, because everything has a cost, obviously. Simplify. Simplify is also, the other side of the coins. We are asking a lot, and I really acknowledge that for the community in terms of safety improvement, in terms of commitment. We want to give you back also something in terms of simplification of your day-to-day life. So what we did, we contracted a study. First, to evaluate also your financial size, how much you represent as an industry, because that's a key element that will feed future rulemaking aspects to make it true or not, but also to give us a flavor of what can be afforded within the industry. Second, we also launched a study to assess the administrative burden on small and medium operators. So you remember last year I was asking operators to give feedback. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of tangible, specific feedback naturally from operators directly. So we have decided to go beyond and to make the first step and launch a study on the field, in the field, for people going to operators to see what could be alleviated on a daily basis and to get focused more on safety rather than on paper or any administrative task that you see of low or even sometimes negative added value. We are also going to ease the FAA STC validation on a single MSN as it is done in general aviation. What does it mean? It means that today, if you are importing a helicopter from the US with a STC. Either the STC holder is not willing to make any validation, or is simply not anymore in the business. Today, it was a big burden to get either the validation of the STC or to remove the STC from the helicopter. We do think that sometimes removing the STC from the helicopter is probably less safe because you are touching sometimes some areas you don't want to change, compared to having the STC which was flying for years safely in the US. So on a single MSN, I insist, single MSN for importing, it could be done, and we will publish soon the procedure, very much like there is in general aviation. First step towards simplifying the work into your operations. And obviously, we have also an initial review of what digitalization means in rotorcraft. And that's something that may be a key driver in the long lead term for you as an operator, for you as an OEM, to streamline also the certification processes and to be better at it. So the roadmap really, in the summary, project was initiated in January, really. We had the task force who deliver end of the year 2018. January, really, we kicked off the activities. As you see, a large number of progress has been done, and I really want here also to give a big thank you to all contributors, external, but also internal. Our teams are really having a lot of hard time also on the workload, tackling the roadmap, tackling the VTOL, tackling the regular certification work, organizing something bigger next year. It's really straining the system, but I think it's worth it. Mid-year will be, midterm review will be 2021. That's key also. And the final project review will be in 2023. So keep with us to follow the progress. We will need your support also actively, I would say, to make it really happen. So the main messages at the end is the project is running, implementation started, and we have tangible results already. So let's keep the momentum and progress forward all together. We need also to keep the pace because, you know, it's a long run, it's a marathon, it's not a short run. And for that, we need to make sure we keep the pace every year, every day within our organizations. And that's the most difficult things to do. As I said, big thank you to all. It's really a fantastic year on the teams, and I really would like to, let's give them a round of applause because I think it's very good. The second pillar of this symposium is also enabling VTOL. I would like to take you through a bit of background. That's where we are. At least, you know, there are as many studies as consultants in the outside world, and as many figures you can really pick up. And the range of the market is from 15 billion to 1.5 trillion. So you see, it's so wide that actually you cannot say anything. And by the way, by 2040. Airbus, if you look at their website, they evaluate the market at 50 billion. And it's pretty much in line with, for instance, Porsche evaluation in their vertical mobility markets. Now, just as a reminder, the commercial air transport market is 6.3 trillion. So still some gaps. Now it's not a negligible niche. If you have a market of 15 billion or even 50 billion, it's still nice to go. Main markets are air metro, air taxi operations. So obviously, aerial work or rescue is not there yet, but the technology needs to mature. What is important to see is the forecasted number of vehicles. So you can see that by 2050, the forecasted number of vehicles is around 100,000 vehicles worldwide. As an order of magnitude, I put how many commercial air transport are flying today in the world. It's 21,500. So it's around 5 times the number of commercial air transport flying around. Obviously, not with the same number of people on board, but that gives you an order of magnitude. What it means also, it's that's probably more mass productions compared to even fixed-wing large transport. And I don't speak about rotorcraft. It's multiples more for rotorcraft. And industrialization is key for the success. And all business models that we see today do foresee a large scalability of their operations. So that's key. And the main market enablers, really the safety is not number one. Even a small vehicle, as long as it is flying, will make the news worldwide. That's for sure. It's something we are fully granted. Especially flying in an urban environment, I can tell you, it will spread within seconds on all medias you can imagine. You know, regular media, social networks, everywhere. So really, to enable this market is safety. There will be some accident. If we are not able to explain why and why the safety, intrinsic safety of the machine was not the real background, is going to be very difficult. Obviously, you have also some technological aspects, which are energy management, automated or more automated connected flights, at a later stage autonomous, and also low-cost computing. We have also sustainability. Don't forget these big aspects. Today, why all these vehicles are electrics, or most of them? Because most of the cities where people are going to forecast the market, they say, you know what? We want zero emission. It's not a few, it's zero emission. That's key. Linked with that is the social acceptance, noise level. We all know that's a big challenge. You don't want to hear just in front, above your head, strange noise all day long. Privacy aspects, and also involvement of local communities. Also, there is the incorporations of ATM, UTM, and beyond. And when I say beyond, it's HEMS operations within city, it's general aviation. All of that need to match together. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to manage. And lastly is the infrastructure. A study from Porsche Consulting really summed up very well, I would think, what needs to be done in the eVTOL area to be successful. Basically, 4 times quieter than helicopter. I think you realize the challenge. 15 times higher reliability. 2 times safer, at least. I would say 10 times, really, if I look at the statistics. And 10 times less expensive. That's the challenge ahead, and that's what we are going to tackle. Safety aspects, they have to be tailored to the risks. And what we've done with risk is a function of kind of operation, CATSPO, private, area of operations, congested hostile, congested remote, number of occupants, obviously, and number of vehicles in operations. There are 2 ways to derail from a regulatory perspective. The first one is being over-conservative or being under-conservative. And linked to the being under-conservative is fooling the industry by targeting only prototype kind of vehicles in terms of safety target. Prototype is nice, but it's still a prototype. So you can do things that are not take shortcuts, that are not fully within a framework. And you know, if you generalize that, for sure, you will end up in the world as an industry. And that's why we developed the SC-VTOL. So it was published this summer, 2nd of July. Here also a big thank you to the team, a huge work behind, where we took into account the risks, as I mentioned, reasonable exposure, by the way, and you know, we've taken as an hypothesis the low to medium, but medium-low market forecast to derive of safety statistics. And we are, you know, today for enhanced category, which is targeting commercial operations around 10 to the minus 9. If you would take some figures, you would end up probably at 10 to the minus 11, which is not feasible on a technical point of view or meaningless. But that gives you, you know, statistically speaking, what it means. Product, taking the service experience we have on VTOL already, which are the conventional rotorcraft, as an input to alleviate the main drawbacks we have today. So requirements are all performance-based. They include proportionality linked to the type of operations, also to the number of passengers. They are compatible with further development. When I say further development, is autonomy, basically, or remotely piloted. And they provide visibility and a level playing field for an emerging industry. And I think you are all part of it. That's the timeline, you know, to give you a flavor. Really, it has been a journey. We have published it, as I said, 2nd of July. And it's not a done job now. We have to develop the accepted means of compliance. And that's what we've done since July. And we are going to present you the priority ones in the next room this afternoon. We have partnered also with industry and EUROCAE Working Group 112 with 5 subgroups. And we have also developed our own IMC on some specs. So 11 draft IMC presented, and also hybrid and electric propulsions are going to be tackled. Obviously, Volker will present later on a dedicated session. And actually, Volker, I need to apologize for him. He has a private, unfortunate issue. Lionel is going to replace him. And Lionel, by the way, when you see him, he's here. He's one of the main contributors of the VTOL. So don't worry, he's fully knowledgeable. VTOL operations, because tackling the vehicle is sometimes which is nice. Operations, enabling operations is probably more difficult. So the agency decided to blend urban air mobility, manned and unmanned, within the UAS, so the drone regulatory activities. Tackling all domains, you know, for product we have the special condition, but ATM, FCL, OPS, environmental aspects. And the guidelines on vertiport also would be provided. And that's managed by the team of Maria Algar. And you can see in this picture what is targeted, really to develop. The first operations for manned and unmanned will be on dedicated corridors. And we'll see later on in the second phase what is probably on demand if there is a big appetite from the industry. So introduction wrap-up. First, thank you for listening. We have the activity of the rotorcraft safety roadmap, the VTOL regulatory framework development, 2020 partnership with EASA, with AHA, the regular work on the certification side. So this is driving a huge work from all stakeholders, from your side, from your teams that are contributing actively, and I would like to thank you for that, to keep pushing for that, to keep asking you to dedicate some of your staff for all these activities, because at the end of the day, it's a benefit for the community. And you will have a flavor of what's going on within the next 2 days, and that's really very good. I would like to say a big thank you to all involved, and in particular to EASA staff and the VTOL department, and beyond, because we have engaged a lot of people within the whole EASA, and really it's a fantastic 2019, and I'm sure 2020 will be as busy, if not more, as usual. Questions are for the Slido, and I wish you a very good symposium. Enjoy, it is your symposium. Thank you very much.